Hello, this is Sean, and this is my experience using Dandelion Energy Geothermal. I'll talk about the previous oil heating and cooling system we had, how we discovered Dandelion as well as geothermal, the sales process we are engaged in, the cost and some of the tax incentives that we took advantage of, the drilling as well as the installation process, and then how the current operation is functioning. What you're looking at here is a power venter, and this is used in a lot of fossil fuel burning systems to vent out carbon monoxide. It's kind of a cheap way to get around building a chimney or a flue. This thing caused us lots of issues. Once or twice a year this would break down on us and add a couple $100 to the maintenance cost. It was extremely loud to the point where we have a finished basement and we could barely hear the TV when this thing went on. I could hear this from 2 floors above. So this was a major contributing factor in why we converted. In order to fix that problem, we would have had to basically create a new chimney with the flue outside. And as you can see, we already have a chimney with a gas burning fireplace and then a wood burning fireplace upstairs. So we would have had a third chimney to the right. You can see where that power venter comes out there in that small box. Basically, it would have been thousands of dollars, so we avoided that cost, and then just kind of looked silly with 2 chimneys on the side of the house. It didn't make sense. This is the existing ductwork we had in place. We already had forced hot air as well as central air, so we didn't have to do any retrofitting to get the ducts in place. What you're seeing is actually some tape work, some duct tape put on there after the cleaning that we had done, as well as some of the Aeroseal. The installers did have to cut into the ducts and make some modifications there. We had an oil furnace, like I mentioned, as well as central air with a condenser outside. And then we had an oil tank we also had to remove. The oil burning furnace we had was about 14 years old. It was breaking down, roughly once or twice a year. Added to the maintenance costs, we had about $300 per fill on oil, about 6 times per year. 2019, 2020 numbers, roughly $2.80 per gallon. Total cost here you can see is about $2,200-$2,500 range. About $1,820 of that is oil costs, roughly 650 gallons that we use per year. And then the maintenance cost is really kind of what put us over the edge. Was just like we said, the constant breakdown. We had to make updates to the actual furnace itself. Our AC, we didn't use all that much in comparison to other homes. We use it maybe 15 times per year at the most. We spent a lot of time outside. We discovered Dandelion through a TechCrunch article that showed up in my newsfeed. So we saw that Dandelion was actually founded by a female, so we thought that was pretty cool in the tech industry. And then we saw that there was funding through Bill Gates' Breakthrough Energy Ventures for a startup company. So that really kind of piqued our interest, and we started digging into it. We saw that actually Dandelion originated from Google X Labs as part of an experiment using newer technology. We didn't really have options to use natural gas that's not in the street. And then we have a propane burning fireplace, but we didn't want to add more tanks outside, and plus the cost of that keeps going up. So we started digging into geothermal. We had originally looked into it a long time ago, but it really wasn't worth the cost and effort. But when we talked to Dandelion, they kind of walked us through some of the process and then some of the tax rebates and incentives. So that's how we started. You fill out a form online, and there's an initial consultation that a person will set up time with you to talk through the process and then just verify your home HVAC setup and that you actually qualify for a geothermal. We provided the electricity usage you can see here. We also provided our yearly oil fuel costs as well as some of the maintenance. We had about 1 or 2 sales calls where we talked through some of the details with the salesman, and he answered a lot of our questions. There's a few email exchanges back and forth, but basically we walked away with that with a quote and then kind of a detailed breakdown. Our package included a 5-ton geothermal water pump, a Aeroseal, which basically sealed up the ducts. I'll explain a little more of that in a second. A buffer water tank to hold some of the water from what they call the de-superheater. And then we also had the rezone some of our ducts. So we had 3 zones originally. They moved it back down to 2, one for upstairs, one for downstairs. And then any of the incidental costs as well as the excavation and the drilling. So there's like 4 or 5 days of drilling, and all of that was included in the price. As far as pricing, you can see here some of the numbers I put together. 39,375. Obviously, that is very pricey, and it's not really worth it if there's no tax incentives. Aeroseal was 2850, and then the duct zoning was 2850. There are other pieces like we talked about water heater and duct cleaning with Dandelion, but that was pretty pricey, so we looked to other contractors for that. Subtotal was 45,075, and then right away we received that Connecticut geothermal rebate of 73.75. And then we had a cash discount of 17.50, so you could finance through Dandelion. I think it was more costly for us to do it that way, so we found some other options. And then we just received a March discount of $1,000. Total was 34,950. So we're estimating of 7,600 for a federal tax credit once we file our taxes. And then what we did with that was we actually paid it on a credit card. We found like a no interest credit card, just open that up, put the deposit on that, and then once we get that federal tax return, we'll pay that off. One thing to note with the credit cards, we did get $350 in credit card rewards, so that's kind of a sweet deal as well. The second piece is we actually got an Energize Connecticut loan approved pretty much right through Dandelion. Again, we gave them some basic information, and then through their online tool, they were able to get that 15,000 approved for us, and that's a 1% loan. So that's super cheap. We learned about Connecticut Green Bank through the solar panel process, and I actually got a 2% loan from Connecticut Green Bank. They went through a local bank to get that loan. Again, that was pretty simple. We were approved pretty much right away. So that's the second piece there, the 12,345. So again, the loans and incentives pretty much make this worth it. Otherwise, I mean, paying almost close to 40,000 for a HVAC system is really expensive. So with all these deals, the bottom line kind of made sense for us. So the estimated payment we're looking at for both loans is roughly $240 per month. It comes out to about $2,900 per year. So that's a little bit more than what we were paying originally. But looking at some of the oil prices this year, the cost is like about 20% higher for oil heating. So it puts us close to what we'd be paying anyway. I think it was like 2,600 range estimating. So it made sense for us. Like I said, we weren't using a ton of oil and a ton of energy. The cost wasn't that expensive, but if you look at it, it's about the same. So that's what I was saying. It's kind of a wash to do the system with the loans. And then I'll get into electricity costs here in a second because that price does go up a little bit. A couple other incidental costs. We did a duct cleaning for $800. I would not recommend that. I think the Aeroseal kind of takes care of that itself. We did have the oil tank removed for $400. We did that through a local contractor and didn't use Dandelion because that was pretty expensive through them. One last thing to mention there is obviously once those loan payments go away, then there's no recurring fuel costs for geothermal. So that basically stays in my pocket. So that, $2,600, $2,800 per year is no longer an expense, and then that becomes a savings. And that is obviously the biggest draw to using geothermal. So you can see here, these are some of the numbers for the electricity used for last year as well as this year. We only had the HVAC system installed about 2 months. See between like 500 to 700 extra kilowatt hours, roughly 630 kilowatt hours for the average. What we were told was the increase should be about 5,000 per year, which I think for us is going to be less. I'm kind of estimating the 3,000 range just because we did have that power venter. So Aeroseal itself, I actually heard about this old house and I thought it was kind of a cool concept. There's effectively substance they blow into the ducts. They kind of close down all the registers and tape everything up and then effectively seal up the entire ductwork itself. So the returns, the supply, all the holes get filled up and there's much less air leakage. Aeroseal was subcontracted. We didn't love the subcontractors. They kind of try to upsell us on some stuff. So we weren't 100% sold on them, but effectively this was the numbers that they gave us for the airflow You can see here the supply is obviously much better than the return. So what we did experience is that the geothermal heat is extremely efficient. It'll heat the house, 2 to 3 degrees within minutes. So that's obviously way better than oil, which took us hours to do. So it's probably a combination, obviously the much more efficient geothermal heat, but then I think the tighter ducts as well. We did experience some delays in getting the drilling started with our project. We were originally estimating August of 2021, and when we first engaged with Dandelion, it was like February or March, I think, is when we actually signed the contract. So about 6 months lead time. And then we actually got some communications from Dandelion CEO that there were some issues going on with the licensing Connecticut itself to get the drillers started. When it was explained to us, we were fine with it. We originally started October of 2021, and obviously that's getting to the colder winter months, so Dandelion gave us a couple of space heaters just to kind of get us through. Luckily, it was really warm. This is a sonic driller. They had to bore 2 holes on the side of the house, going down about 500 feet. This is pretty loud, so we actually let the neighbors know there'd be drilling going on for about a week, and there were really no issues with that at all. Obviously, it was wet and muddy, but they basically took away all the mud. This is where they did the excavation on the side of the house. You can see here they basically rough graded it back. I didn't have time to plant the seed before the fall came, but here's one borehole, and then here's the other. Like I said, about 500 feet down, they connected a pipe right in through the house there in the part that's without the landscaping. So I need to fix that in the spring. So that hum you hear, that's the sound of the heat pump running on stage 2. That's heating up the house. And what you see is just some pipes coming in through the foundation. They filled that up with concrete, and then all the pipes are wrapped pretty tight. You can tell that everything's insulated from start to finish here. There's a water expansion tank. You can see some shut-offs there. I don't plan to touch any of that. And then the loop itself runs to the other side. So here's the pump on the other side, and you can see some more shut-offs. Again, I don't plan on touching any of that. So this is the loop that then runs through the heat pump itself. So then you can see on the right here, that's actually the water, the hot water. So that's connected into our water tank, and that's where the de-superheater comes in. So we have excess hot water. This is a new water tank. It's just a holding tank. There's no power to it. It just has the extra hot water that then connects over to our existing water tank. Like I said, I didn't replace this during the install with Dandelion. Most likely we'll get a new one fairly soon. This is about 14 years old, so it's kind of had its useful life. One side effect we did notice was actually the water was really hot, so I had to adjust this a little bit. I'm still kind of playing with the temperature. As far as like the craftsmanship and the installation, Dandelion was great. Everything was in the finished basement. It looks like really nothing was ever replaced. It's all within the same spot that was there before. We only had to remove our oil tank, which again, we didn't need that. And then we needed a spot for the water de-superheater, so that was just a small area. And they pulled electric from the main panel. You can see here they used armored cable, so that was all up to code, and inspectors had no issue with any of that. This is the ecobee thermostat. You can see the infrared sensor light blinking there. That doesn't, you don't actually see that in real life. The camera's picking that up. The schedule here is something you can manipulate. There's also comfort settings, and you can see there's some other system settings in there. Right now, I have some comfort settings set just for the house, or if I'm home or away, or I do have an adjusting setting there because I am using a schedule. I'm just kind of playing around with that to see what the electricity usage is. From what I understand, geothermal, you can just set a temperature and leave it. So I'll try that in January and see how that goes. Try to get the thermostat to run, or the heat pump to run just on stage 1. So that's what I was trying to achieve here with the schedule, but I think I'm overkill with my schedule, so I may adjust that. Eversource, my energy company, gave me actually a rebate of $50 for Amazon gift card because I use this echo setting and I registered with them. So they want to kind of monitor the usage there. And this actually automatically adjusts if that sensor, if I walk by as people at home, the sensor's on, then the heat will adjust to the comfort settings. One kind of random feature I found was actually you can play Spotify through a speaker on the Echo B, which is kind of cool. Maintenance is basically replace this air filter here roughly every 3 months, and then probably every year or so to kind of clean out that little condensate pump there. Air filter is 28 by 34 by 1. This is an Enertech heat pump. You can see the Dandelion badge on there, but it's actually Enertech, and we were given this in like September. They gave us a free upgrade saying that it was quieter, more efficient. Overall, I'd recommend Dandelion given all the delays that we faced. They still helped us through it. Give a lot of credit to Amber, the account manager. Countless emails and questions. She was very responsive, got back to us as soon as possible. Great feedback actually is for Diego. He was the installer. It was, like I said, it was kind of late October when this thing was getting installed and it was getting cold. It was the weekend, Friday, and Diego kind of stayed late, probably 8 o'clock at night. He got Geothermal up and running for us. It wasn't fully installed, but he got it running just for the weekend to kind of keep the heat on, and we definitely needed it. So overall, I'm happy with it, and I would recommend it to anybody who qualifies. I will put links to most of this information in the description, so feel free to click around and take a look. Thank you much for listening and hope you enjoy.